Hello everyone. Today we're diving into one of the most chilling cases ever to unfold in the Lion City of Singapore. The story takes us to Kallang Riverside Park, a peaceful stretch in central Singapore that runs along the country's longest river, the Kallang River, which flows into the Singapore Strait. Today, it's a place where families picnic, joggers pass by, and water sports enthusiasts kayak and race their boats. But years ago, this same park became the backdrop for a nightmare that still lingers in Singapore's memory. It all began on the morning of the 16th of June 2005, around 9:15 a.m. A sanitation worker was collecting trash along the riverbank when he spotted a brown cardboard box sitting there, sealed tightly with tape. Normally, he would have tossed it straight into his cart, but this box looked unusually heavy, soaked through by water. As he tried to lift it, the box split open, spilling its contents onto the sand. At first, he saw only scraps of old newspaper and a green-tinted plastic bag. But as he looked closer, his heart froze. Inside was part of a human body. Terrified, the worker immediately alerted the police. Officers arrived quickly and confirmed the horror. The box contained the lower half of a woman's body. Strangely, there was no blood, no smell, and the remains had been wrapped with sheets of Lian Hewan Bao, a Chinese-language evening paper widely circulated across Singapore. The problem? It was so common that tracing the origin of those newspapers was nearly impossible, like looking for a needle in a haystack. Even so, the police knew they couldn't take chances. A human life had been taken. First, they considered the circumstances. Violent crime was rare in Singapore. The country was known for its low crime rate, and because the Kallang River connected directly to the busy Singapore Strait, where hundreds of vessels passed every day. One theory was that the crime might have occurred at sea, and the remains dumped overboard, only to drift back into the park. Adding to the challenge, Lian Hewan Bao wasn't only sold in Singapore, it had a modest readership in neighboring countries as well. So detectives broadened their scope. They requested shipping records of vessels that had passed through the Kallang Basin that day, hoping to identify anyone suspicious. While the paperwork made progress slow, the investigation pressed forward. Within the next hour, search teams combed a radius of about 2.5 miles around the scene. That's when they found another cardboard box across the riverbank, roughly 650 feet away from the first. This one held the upper half of the same victim, wrapped again in green plastic and newspaper. It was gruesome evidence, but there was one small relief. The second box had a barcode, which investigators could trace to a local store. And unlike the first discovery, the upper torso still had both arms and hands intact, meaning fingerprints could be used to confirm the victim's identity. Hours later, after 6 painstaking hours of forensic comparison, investigators finally had a name. The victim was Liu Hongmei, a 22-year-old woman from Changchun, Jilin Province, China. She had been in Singapore for 3 years, working at an electronics factory in the Serangoon area. Her co-workers had already reported her missing. Detectives immediately visited the factory, checked her records, and inspected her belongings. That's when they stumbled upon a troubling document. A company notice from 2004, reprimanding Liu Hongmei and a local supervisor for inappropriate behavior. According to the report, the two had been seen kissing and hugging during work hours. On one occasion in May 2004, they were even caught showing affection in the office, in front of colleagues, who later filed complaints. Both received verbal warnings from management. Liu Hongmei admitted her mistake, but the supervisor, far older and already married, refused to accept the reprimand. He wrote to the management, insisting the kiss was only because it was her birthday. Nothing more. From that point on, though, their relationship was no longer a secret. While Liu Hongmei was known as a hard-working, responsible employee, gossip spread like wildfire among co-workers. Many whispered that she only advanced at the factory because she had support from her supervisor. That man was Leong Siu Kor, 55 years old, married with 3 children. In fact, his own son was 2 years older than Liu Hongmei. The revelation alarmed investigators. They paid a visit to Leong Siu Kor, but at first, they didn't tell him the grim truth that Liu Hongmei's body had been found. Instead, they framed it as a simple missing person inquiry. But during questioning, red flags started to show. First, Leong flatly denied having any romantic involvement with her, calling the allegations false and claiming he was a respectable family man. Second, throughout the interrogation, he appeared nervous, fidgeting with his hands and stammering in his answers. Third, officers noticed a fresh scratch across his left wrist. When asked about the injury, Leong casually said he had cut himself fixing a water pipe at home. Detectives weren't convinced. They decided to head straight to his house to take a closer look. At Leong's residence, investigators uncovered several suspicious items. Inside a cabinet, they found a stack of Chinese-language newspapers. In the living room and in his son's room, there were green plastic bags similar to the kind used to wrap the victim's remains. In the kitchen, police collected a worn kitchen knife, a rubber mallet, a roll of tape, and even a bicycle with stains on its basket. To the officers, these were not ordinary household objects, they were potential evidence. Leong was immediately brought to the police station for further questioning. At the time of the crime, his wife and eldest daughter were away on vacation in Thailand. His son was at school, and only his younger daughter had been at home. She too was brought in so officers could take her statement. At first, Leong Siu Chor continued to deny any relationship with Liu Hongmei. While detectives pressed harder and gathered more evidence from his home, they began to suspect that this very place was the crime scene. Still, something felt strange. The bathroom, which should have shown obvious signs, looked spotless, too clean, with no trace or odor of anything unusual. That detail triggered a memory for one of the senior officers. He recalled the John Martin case from 10 years earlier. In that investigation, the suspect had also scrubbed the bathroom thoroughly, but forensic experts still managed to find a single drop of blood under the sink. Drawing from that experience, the officer carefully inspected the sink and surrounding areas, but this time found nothing. Yet persistence paid off. While crouching to look more closely, the officer's eyes caught a tiny reddish stain at the bottom of the toilet bowl barely 2 millimeters wide. Laboratory testing later confirmed it was indeed Liu Hongmei's blood. Even then, Leong refused to confess. Only after investigators laid out the mounting evidence did they confront him directly. "Mr. Leong, we already know Liu Hongmei has been killed. The boxes, the newspapers, the plastic bags, the tape, everything matches what we found in your home. We're still analyzing the evidence, but whether you admit it or not, the truth will come out. If you keep resisting, you'll only make things worse for yourself." By 4 a.m. on the 17th of June, 2005, Leong Siu Chor finally broke down. He admitted he was responsible but claimed he had been pressured into it. According to his story, Liu Hongmei had wanted the two of them to die together for love, and had begged him to help end her life. It was his first confession, but the officers knew the truth was far more complicated. Who exactly was this man? Leong Siu Chor was a Singaporean of Chinese descent, born on the 19th of April 1955. He had a twin brother. After graduating from secondary school, he completed a pre-university program and later served in the military. In 1976, he joined Singapore Telecom and remained there for 2 decades. During that time, he continued his studies and earned a diploma in electronics and communications engineering from Singapore Polytechnic in 1983. By 1996, Leong Siu Chor left Singapore Telecom to start his own business. But his reserved personality didn't fit the demands of management. By May 1997, the business had failed, and he returned to wage work. Eventually, he became a production supervisor at an electronics factory, the very place where he met Liu Hongmei. Despite regularly working the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. night shift, he oversaw more than a dozen workers and earned about $3,743 a month, equivalent to about $2,200 at the time. That was enough to support his family. Leong initially managed Team 3, but in January 2004 he was transferred to Team 4, where Liu Hongmei worked as a machine operator. Through daily interactions, their relationship grew closer. On the 13th of June 2004, thanks to Leong's recommendation, Liu Hongmei received a promotion and a raise. That marked the official beginning of their relationship. Liu Hongmei had come to Singapore from China in 2002. She started working at the electronics factory in November of that year. Over just 2.5 years, she was promoted twice, proving her diligence and reliability. She consistently earned a small monthly attendance bonus of 30 Singapore dollars, and her monthly salary was about 1,406 Singapore dollars, around $900. Despite her modest income, she lived frugally and sent money home every 3 months, usually around 2,000 Singapore dollars, roughly $1,200 each time. In mid-2003, she even helped her sister come to Singapore to work. Together, they hoped to build a better future. It seemed her sister was adjusting well. On the 24th of April 2005, she married a Singaporean man, with a formal wedding planned for September. Liu Hongmei was thrilled about being her bridesmaid, but then came the puzzling question. Why would she agree to such a tragic death pact, with Liang just 2 months before her sister's wedding? According to Liang's statement, on the 15th of June 2005, he invited Liu Hongmei to his home while his family was away. "This was the first time we met at my house," he said. "She arrived around 9:50 a.m., and we sat on the bed talking. She told me she was overwhelmed by gossip at work, by the constant whispers about our relationship. She said she wanted us to leave Singapore and start over in China. I told her that was impossible. I was already in my 50s, with a wife and children. How could I start a new life abroad? I rejected the idea. But she was determined. She said she would take responsibility for supporting the family. But I still refused. After some back and forth, she suddenly became emotional and said, 'Then let's die together. After everything, maybe this is the only ending we have.' To show her sincerity, she added, 'I can go first, but you must promise to follow right after me.' I agreed. Then, I took a towel from the room and placed it around her neck. While facing each other, I tightened it. She looked at me, and I asked if she was all right. She whispered that she was fine. I pulled tighter. After several long minutes, her strength faded, and she went still. Liang claimed that afterwards, he changed his mind about dying himself. 'Her face looked frightening,' he said. 'I didn't want to look that way. I didn't feel regret. I only thought about how to cover up what had happened before my youngest daughter came home that evening.' It was the beginning of a grim aftermath, one that investigators would later uncover piece by piece. Liang Xiuchor knew he had limited time. His youngest daughter would be home from school by 6 p.m., and he still had his night shift later that evening. He admitted that he needed to take action quickly so no one in his family would discover what had happened. According to investigators, he moved Liu Hongmei's body into the bathroom. He claimed he used tools from around the house, ordinary household items, to conceal what he had done. Later that day, he noticed some faint stains on himself. Without thinking much of it, he rinsed off, grabbed his bicycle, and even took a couple of taxi rides to scatter items connected to Liu Hongmei at different spots around the city. By 5 p.m., he returned home. With time still left before his shift, he went back to the bathroom to scrub it down again. This time, he worked carefully, cleaning thoroughly, sharpening tools to remove traces, and throwing linens into the washer. He then quickly changed into his work clothes and rushed to his job, leaving the house in order. Before leaving, he spotted Liu Hongmei's handbag lying on the floor. He slipped it into a plastic bag and tossed it away while heading to the factory. That night, at 7:30 p.m., the factory roll call revealed that 2 employees were absent. One of them was Liu Hongmei. Liang even pretended to show concern, asking a co-worker to call her to see why she hadn't shown up. But her phone had already been switched off, and from that day forward, she was never seen again. Liang later confessed, but his version of events leaned heavily on the idea that Liu Hongmei had chosen to die, and he only helped. Without stronger evidence, such a story could have raised doubt and possibly spared him from the death penalty. Forensic specialists faced their own challenge. Based on the partial remains found, they couldn't conclusively prove whether Liu Hongmei had wanted to end her life. Complicating matters further, Singapore's tropical climate meant that remains exposed outdoors for more than 24 hours would deteriorate quickly. 3 days had already passed, yet 5 missing parts of her body still hadn't been recovered. Liang's statement was that 3 pieces had been thrown into the Singapore River, while 2 others were placed in a bus trash bin. To track them down, investigators sought help from the Meteorological Service. Using data on wind speed and river currents, they calculated that the bags, each weighing around 9 pounds, likely hadn't drifted far from where Liang claimed he disposed of them. Still, despite deploying 30 officers to search the riverbanks, marshes, and surrounding areas, no evidence surfaced. At that point, one of the lead officers, Inspector Lim, considered another possibility. What if the missing parts had already been collected by sanitation workers? He hurried to the docking station where river waste was gathered. Workers told him trash from the river was removed every 2 days, loaded onto a barge, and shipped miles away to an offshore collection point. By the time Lim arrived, the barge was already empty. He learned the waste had been transported to a southern incineration plant for disposal. Acting quickly, he phoned the plant and ordered them to halt operations immediately. When he arrived that afternoon, he was confronted with a mountain of refuse so overwhelming that the stench alone made it hard to breathe. But time was critical. Wearing masks and armed with shovels, the entire team began the grueling task of combing through bag after bag of garbage, determined not to miss anything. They worked tirelessly into the night. After nearly 10 hours of digging through 3 tons of waste, Inspector Lim caught a familiar scent, a smell every officer in his line of work would recognize. Later, he admitted, "It was the first time in my life I felt relief at such a smell." And with that, the team finally uncovered the remaining parts of Liu Hongmei. Examinations showed no sign of blunt trauma to her head, but investigators did find 2 tiny metal fragments embedded in the muscle of her left leg, which matched marks from a kitchen knife discovered at Liang's home. Still, the most pressing question remained: what had actually caused her death? Forensic experts couldn't give a definitive answer. The remains had deteriorated too much in the tropical heat, and the object Liang claimed he used a towel would not normally leave strong marks. The absence of clear defensive injuries on her body only deepened the mystery. Did she truly agree to his plan, or was this a carefully staged story from a man desperate to avoid justice? Investigators weren't convinced by his claims, and they knew the search for answers was far from over. Their breakthrough came when they discovered Liu Hongmei's bank card had been stolen, and nearly all of her savings were gone. In fact, she had already filed a police report about the theft. Authorities had arranged for her to come in and review security footage to identify the suspect. But tragically, she was killed the very next day. When officers reviewed the surveillance tapes themselves, they spotted a man withdrawing money. His face was partially hidden under a cap, and he had changed his outfit more than once. Still, investigators recognized him. It was Liang Xiukor. After ruling out his twin brother as a possibility, they concluded Liang himself was responsible. A search of his home confirmed their suspicion. Investigators found the very same green sweater, baseball cap, and blue shorts he had worn in the footage. They also discovered a work uniform and polo shirt that he hadn't managed to change out of, both carrying blood traces. Confronted with this evidence, police questioned him again. Liang continued to insist that Liu Hongmei had chosen to die and that he had only assisted her. As for the stolen bank card, he admitted to using it but brushed it off as a joke between the two of them. He claimed that on the 13th of June 2005, he and Liu Hongmei had gone to a budget hotel. While she was in the shower, he rummaged through her belongings and took her bank card. He already knew her PIN, and later that afternoon, around 5 p.m., he withdrew more than 2,000 Singapore dollars. He said that the next day, he returned both the money and the card to her. But investigators quickly pointed out 3 problems. First, they never found that money in Liu Hongmei's possession. Second, if she had gotten her card and cash back on June 14, she would not have reported the theft. Third, his withdrawal pattern looked nothing like a harmless prank. Bank records revealed that on June 13, Liang had made 4 withdrawal attempts at different ATMs. The first for 1,000 Singapore dollars, the second for $100, the third for 1,000 but unsuccessful, and the fourth for another failed attempt at 1,000. On his way home, he even used the card to make a small purchase of 40 Singapore dollars for everyday items. The following day, disguised once again, he made another withdrawal of $960, bringing the total to 2,071.40 Singapore dollars. Beyond the evidence trail, people who knew Liu Hongmei painted a very different picture. Her friends and family described her as cheerful, full of ambition, and with no reason to harm herself. Her sister said the two of them were extremely close, meeting twice a week, but she had no idea about Liu Hongmei's secret relationship with Liang. She had even planned to introduce her sister to a dating agency, hoping she would settle down in Singapore. Over the past 2 years, her sister had only met Liang 4 times, the last being on June 13 at a family event organized by the electronics factory. She recalled that everyone had seemed happy that day. She also remembered a casual phone call the following evening, June 14, when Liu Hongmei sounded upbeat and confident. She had just taken an English exam and was optimistic about passing. If she did, she wanted to continue her studies and eventually earn a license as a tour guide. Investigators later confirmed she was indeed enrolled in English classes at a local language center, where she had been studying since the 20th of May, 2003. She had already paid about 1,288 Singapore dollars in tuition over 2 years. The program director remembered her clearly. He told police that she had even come to see him on June 14, just hours before her death, asking about tuition fees for future courses. She told him she would think it over and get back to him. All of this testimony reinforced what police already believed. Lu Hongmei had plans for her future. She was hopeful, determined, and far from someone who wanted her life to end. Li Jiantahua, the director of a local matchmaking agency known for his remarkable memory, testified that although his agency had more than 14,000 members, he remembered Liu Hongmei clearly. She had come to his office on the 27th of May, 2004, looking for a serious partner with the hope of marriage. What struck him most was her gentle demeanor and polite manner. Her criteria were simple but earnest. She wanted an educated man, someone knowledgeable, and above all, someone serious about settling down because her dream was to build a life in Singapore. He introduced her to 5 potential matches, and she seemed most interested in 1 civil servant and 1 manager. Faced with mounting testimony from witnesses, on the 10th day after his arrest, Liang Xiuchor finally admitted to killing Liu Hongmei for money. He confessed that on the night of June 14, when Liu Hongmei told him police were going to review the bank's security footage and that she would be going in the next day to identify the thief, he panicked. Over the phone, he persuaded her to stop by his house first, saying he would go with her to the bank. On June 15, Liang initially intended to confess to Liu Hongmei, to admit his theft and return the money and the card, hoping for her forgiveness. But pride got in the way. He thought if the affair was exposed, he would lose his job, face disgrace from his family and peers, and his life would collapse. So instead, he tested her feelings, asking whether she was willing to die for him. When he asked why she loved him, Liu Hongmei replied softly, "Because you're a good husband and a good father. You know how to care for your family. I feel happy when I'm with you." Hearing this, Liang's mind twisted. He knew the bank card issue could be solved, but he deliberately shifted the conversation, provoking her and planting the idea of a death pact. It was manipulation, and she believed him. When Liang later tightened a towel around her neck, investigators would argue he already had disposal plans forming in his mind. His excuses about her appearance afterward were nothing more than a cover to deny responsibility. By May 2006, the case went to trial at Singapore's High Court. In front of the public and the press, Liang changed his story yet again, claiming that his confession on June 26 had been forced by investigators. He even alleged that an officer tried to gain his trust by buying him iced tea, but the evidence told another story. When asked when this supposedly happened, Liang said it was before his statement was recorded. A police officer quietly opened his duty log. According to the record, the tea purchase took place on the 5th of July 2005, 9 days after Liang had already confessed. On that hot day, the officer had simply bought 2 bottles of cold tea when Liang mentioned he was thirsty. His claim crumbled instantly. Running out of tactics, Liang tried one last angle. He argued that since Liu Hongmei's body showed no external wounds, it must mean she had gone along willingly. Forensic experts countered firmly. They explained that the absence of injuries did not prove consent. It could mean she was caught off guard and subdued before she could resist. When the judge asked Liang to demonstrate how he had tightened the towel, a sinister smile crossed his face, cold and unsettling. Reporters later described the moment as chilling. Lin, a journalist for the Jim paper, recalled that the smile sent shivers down her spine. Throughout the trial, one detail stood out. Not a single member of Liang's family showed up in court. After 16 days of trial, the judge reached a clear conclusion. Liu Hongmei never intended to harm herself. She was a young woman full of hope and plans for the future. It was Liang Xiuchor, driven by his own greed, who took her life. On the 19th of May 2006, he was sentenced to death. Though he appealed, his request was denied. On the morning of the 30th of November 2007, his sentence was carried out. He was 52 years old. Liu Hongmei's funeral was held on the 11th of July 2005. For personal reasons, her family could not be present. Fortunately, a kind funeral worker named Chung La Luan made sure she received dignity in her final farewell. He not only carefully prepared her remains but also gave her a symbolic pair of legs, allowing her to leave this world complete. Along with her, some of her favorite books, toys, and clothes were cremated. More than 150 people came to attend. Some arrived out of curiosity, some to pay their respects, and others with misguided hopes, like finding lottery tickets hidden among her belongings. In the end, Liu Hongmei's ashes were returned to her hometown in China. Looking back on this case, it is impossible not to see how tragic her encounter with Leong Siu-chor truly was. For him, what he called love was never love at all, it was selfishness and desire. For Liu Hongmei, her trust in his sweet words became the costliest mistake of her life. A relationship without a future is better ended early, with honesty and peace. In life, we must remain clear-minded when facing promises that sound too good to be true. Don't let emotions blind reason. Don't let greed bury conscience. Value yourself, cherish your worth, and never lose who you are for anyone. This story is also a reminder of the importance of awareness and self-protection, especially for women far from home who may be vulnerable. Always remember, family and friends are the strongest foundation. Share your burdens with them instead of carrying the weight alone. And above all, live with responsibility for yourself, for your loved ones, and for society. That is the greatest lesson we can take from the tragedy of Liu Hongmei. Today's story ends here. We'll see you again in the next episode. Goodbye.